Hello everyone. نامای Herenga. خوش اومدین. Welcome to this webinar on XR technologies and the Metaverse, imagining the future of tourism. This webinar today hosted by Group of Tourism Management, School of Management, Victoria University of Wellington. I'd like to welcome all of our audience and participants from New Zealand, also international attendees. I also acknowledge our three speakers from UK, US, and New Zealand. Before we move forward, I'd like to thank Associate Professor Ian Yeoman and Louise Grenside for organizing this webinar. My name is Naji Gharibi, and I'm a PhD student in tourism management at Victoria University of Wellington. And it's my pleasure to chair this webinar today. Today's webinar about the future of tourism. With the current pandemic and acceleration in technology usage and also introducing the Metaverse, it seems that we have a future using XR technologies ahead. So today we have asked this question of our three speakers, and consider this and imagine it's 2030. And so how XR technologies and the Metaverse will shape the future of tourism industry. So we're going to take you on a journey to the future from the perspective of our three experts. So today we have three prominent speakers. Associate Professor Faizan Ali from University of South Florida, Professor Timothy Jung from Manchester Metropolitan University, and Dr. Christopher Monroe from Victoria University of Wellington. They're going to explore different aspects of XR. Every speaker has 10 minutes to speak, and we also have the question and answer function open on the webinar. So this means that you can ask any question during the webinar, and please put it on the chat function under Q&A, not in the comments, please. And our speaker will be able to see them, and you'll also be able to upload the question to come first. And when we get to the end of the session, I pose all of the questions, and I'll be able to select some of the questions that a number of people who like to be asked. I also remind my fellow speakers to put themselves on mute when they're not speaking, and also reminding everyone that we are recording this webinar, and the recording will be shared with all of the attendees, including participants who have registered and have not been able to join us today in a couple of weeks. And I also reminding my fellow speakers that I'm in control of slides, so you'll hear them say next slide when they like me to move on. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Faizan Ali. He's an associate professor in the School of Hospitality and Technology Management, Muma College of Business, University of South Florida. And his topic is emerging trends. So first of all, welcome, Faizan.
Thank you very much, Angie, and a good day to everyone. I literally am looking at the future right now, looking at you and Chris, both of you being in New Zealand. So, before we go into the emerging trends, I would say that there's a famous quote that says, there's future in the past, right? And so before I go into emerging trends, I would really go into the past a little bit. So Naji, next slide, please. Okay, so when we look at virtual reality and augmented reality or mixed reality and all these buzzwords that we are listening to today, it seems like very futuristic, or even today we don't have a lot of stuff going on about these terminologies. Interestingly, in tourism, the first ever mention of virtual reality and or sort of augmented reality for tourism was mentioned in 1996, which is quite old. I mean, if you really think about it, many students that I teach today were not even born at that time, right? So in 1996, it was the first time when it was mentioned. Now, interestingly, not only it was mentioned, but there was a counter article that was published in the same issue in tourism management in which it was first mentioned. So these two papers that you see right in front of you, they were both published in the same issue. One of them calling it as a fact or fantasy, whereas another one is calling it as a threat to travel and tourism. Now, I would let all the audience be the judge of all this and decide whether it's a threat, whether it's a fact, it's a fantasy or whatnot. Now, those of you who are from Florida, and if you have been to Universal or Disney or any of the theme parks, I would see that you would really look at it as a reality of travel and tourism happening today. All right, let's move forward, Naji, please. Next slide. Now, the first ever implementation of virtual reality in travel and tourism happened in, again, 1996. And right now, what you see in front of you is the first example of how virtual reality was implemented in Disney. And this article actually was a conference paper that was published in Academy of Marketing. And it talks about Disney's Aladdin, which was the first implementation. So what you see right in front of you is a screenshot of the virtual environment, where is this person sitting on a small ride type of thing, experiencing the virtual reality. Now, what's most interesting is those of us who have used Oculus or any futuristic goggles and all those things. This is the first ever helmet or first ever device that was used for virtual reality that you see on your screen. So when I look at it from 1996, fast forward to 2022, I think we have come a long way and devices have changed quite a bit. So enough for the history. Let's move on a little bit and see what else do we have. So since my topic moves towards emerging trends, Naji, next slide, please. I'll tell you a little bit about what has been happening in tourism research. So tourism research, of course, have looked into virtual reality, augmented reality, recently a little bit of mixed reality and stuff like that. If I put them into topical trends, right? So what we have seen in the last decade and a half, there's a lot of different things. Grouping them would show us that most of the research is application of virtual and augmented reality in different settings. And we are lucky to have Professor Timothy Jung with us today because he is one of the initial people who started studying application of virtual reality and augmented reality into different settings like museums and heritage sites and things like this. So that's one major topic that we have seen. Then another stream of research is really towards acceptance and adoption of these technologies in travel and tourism. Now, mind it that most of this research really looks at consumers' adoption and acceptance of these technologies and not so much of other stakeholders, which is another issue I'll talk about very quick. Then the third stream of research is really about consumer behavior related to augmented virtual reality and XRs, which really deals with the quality of what we are getting as a product, right? So the quality of the image, the quality of the information that's coming out of it, the overall service or system quality, the accuracy of information or content that we are getting out of it. So that's another stream of research that has been covered. The fourth stream is related to experiences. So it's really about telepresence that comes out of it, or flow or the interaction. So I would really call it as experiential or memorable experiences. That's another stream of research that we have seen in the past 10 to 15 years about mixed reality or extended reality and tourism. Then recently, after COVID-19, there's some research that we are looking at, which is offering these as alternate tourism sources. So more about ecotourism or more about sustainable tourism or more about things where you cannot go personally because of the things, coming out of COVID. So really visiting places virtually without your physical presence there. And then the last, this is not a stream, but this is more like application of research, but that is experiments. So there's some experiments that have been implemented into studying mixed reality, but these experiments are really looking at a very limited aspects of XR, which is about atmospherics or design related stuff. So this is about tourism research if we sum it up. Now, of course, research that is done in tourism is also published in journals outside of tourism domain, like marketing or business journals. So if we go to next slide, please. There's some other research that is done in mainstream marketing research or mainstream business journals, and they've gone a little bit ahead of this. So what we see in those journals is a bit ahead of what we have seen in tourism. So three areas that I see that are not covered in tourism that much are communication and social media using extended reality. So some people are covering aspects of YouTube. What happens if YouTube starts offering virtual reality videos or augmented reality videos? Advertising, already we have seen some research coming out of effectiveness of AR and VR in advertising. Then experiments are way ahead in mainstream business research. So we see people using eye gazing, EEG devices, neurostimulators, heart rate monitors, things like this in mainstream business research. And lastly, there's also research that covers real implementation of extended realities or mixed reality. So new product development, we know that companies like Ford is really implementing virtual reality to test the cars and how strong their cars are if there's an accident, collision or stuff like that. Walmart and some other companies are using it for training. So we see that research coming out. Similarly, product trials, like Nike has product trials, some other fashion retailers. South Korea is very famous for this. And then IKEA is doing it, Amazon is doing it. So several companies are doing product trials, and we see that type of stuff in mainstream business research coming out. Now, Naji, next slide, please. If we really talk about research, and that's what I'll conclude my presentation with very soon, we cannot go in isolation with research. So all this I just talked about, this is happening already in the research field. But what other stuff is happening around us? So we as human beings, what other stuff we are looking at? So there's a lot of things, but I've summarized a few things that are important for extended realities. And one of them is a discussion about going beyond intentions or adoption of technology and looking at people's well-being or people's loneliness or accessibility or people's with different type of disabilities. So that's a discussion that is happening. Obviously, nothing directly related to XR, but there's a discussion about it. Another discussion that we are seeing around us from companies, businesses is focusing on experiences, creating experiences, going beyond brands and really creating experiences. We also have technology diffusion factor. More and more companies are getting into technology race. Big companies like Samsung, LG, Sony, Microsoft, Intel, all these tech giants are getting into, XR, MR, AR, VR, all this stuff. The fourth thing that we see around us is going beyond the wow factor. So a few years ago, any company that was implementing service robots or AR or VR was really taken as a wow or a surprise factor. But now we are going into a position where this is no more a wow factor. I mean, people are used to it now, right? So you have to go beyond that. There's also discussion about privacy and personalization, data privacy and security of data and all those type of things. Then there's legal discussions. We all know what happened last year, the year before with Google, with Facebook, with companies that are having a lot of data. There's also a discussion about academia and industry gaps. So whatever we are doing in academia, whatever industry needs, there's a big gap in it. And then the last one is the Bitcoin factor or cryptocurrency or NFTs, which really is leading towards metaverse discussion. So these are the things that are going around us. So what I'll do is I'll take all this discussion and what I just talked about, what research has been done about AR and VR and XR, and then I'll offer you 10 different questions or thought nuggets that you can take from this webinar, from my part of the discussion, and start looking at it as future research streams. So Naji, next slide, please. Okay, yes. So the first question I have for you is, because there's a lot of discussion about, accessibility, about acceptance of people from different cultures and places like that. So the first question is, can we use XR to develop cultural awareness and acceptance towards different differences more effectively? Can this be used to do that? The second question is, can we use different knowledge fields to boost research on tourism and hospitality context? So why I say that is because right now we are really at the surface of implementing AR and VR. For instance, I'm part of a project where we want to implement VR at an island. And the island actually is having issues with many people visiting there. So we propose to them to use AR and VR to help with that. But the problem is it's so remote that there's no infrastructure. So if there's no infrastructure, they cannot really implement those type of things, right? So we also have to see how we can bring different knowledge fields to have a better understanding of implementation of XR into hospitality and tourism. Then the third one is how multi-sensory virtual tourism experiences can be implemented. So we already know that there are some companies that are coming up with different hardware, like special shoes that mimic walking, haptic gloves, olfactory devices that can engage other senses. So if we add those to virtual and augmented reality or mixed reality, what type of experiences do we get? If anybody has gone to Universal or Disney, you have seen that recently they have started implementing multisensory experiences by usage of XR and VR. Now, once we have this, the next question would be, is XR creating an enhancement to traditional experience, or is it a new experience altogether? How do we measure it? How do we measure its effectiveness? The fifth question I have for all of you is, we already see some application of cyborgs, mechanical limbs, contact lenses, and stuff like this. Do we have a room to merge XR with human body enhancements? Can we use augmented reality contact lenses instead of having, glasses or stuff like that? Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, I promise. So my sixth question is, Naji, one slide back, please. Okay, yeah, my sixth question is, we already see that there's some studies that show that using XR, especially virtual reality, can create some short-term health issues like blurred vision, nausea, headache, etc. We don't have a lot of research about if there's any long-term health-related issues. So would there be any long-term health-related issues? If there are, how can service providers deal with that? Then we already see a rise in cryptocurrencies, virtual identities, NFTs, and metaverse-related stuff. So in this situation, in 2030, how do we apply traditional marketing models? What happens to product price place promotion? Do we have the same model implementing for metaverse, or do we change it? What happens if there's a service failure in metaverse? Do we apply the same relationships between brand and consumer, same theories? Do we have the same?
Can we draw this to the conclusion? Sorry.
Yes, just to
Thank
one
you so
moment.
much.
Okay. And then the question number 8 is, we know that there's devices involved into this experience, like microphones, cameras, mobile devices, and location and all this. So what are the legal and ethical issues? If we have this market with new types of experiences, what type of skills do we need to instill in students who are in hospitality and tourism programs? And then the last one is implementing newer methodologies to really understand these new experiences, including sensors, monitors in real world situations, and probably using both quantitative and qualitative methodologies like analytics and virtual ethnographies to understand this better. With this, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faizan. Really interesting question. And I think there is a lot of potential for future research, including your presentation. Thank you so much. So we have our first question pop up. And so if I remind you, our attendees, if you have any question, put it in Q&A. Now I'd like to turn to our second speaker, Professor Timothy John. He's the chair professor of XR and director of Creative AR and VR Hub at Manchester Metropolitan University in UK. And his topic is Metaverse. Welcome, Timothy.
All right. Can you all hear me well? Yeah. Okay. So thanks very much for your invitation. So it's great to speak about kind of Metaverse, and thanks Dr. Faizan to set up very nice kind of a scene before I start the Metaverse. Okay, next slide, please. So I think we are experiencing a very interesting time. So we already started kind of digital transformation. So digital transformation is the process of using digital text to create or modify existing process or culture or customer experience because of lots of changes of environment. And COVID actually made it happen, is accelerate this kind of digital transformation. And therefore, we are have a very, very different experience at the moment. And also, it's very important to look at some technological platform perspective, because one time PC was one of the main platform and internet was the second platform and mobile was the next platform. So many new companies like Apple, Google, or Facebook, they emerged because of this new platform and they dominated. They all kind of a world economy in a way that they actually help to exchange idea and do the business. And then what is the next platform? Then everybody's talking about Metaverse, because AR and VR is a great technology to enhance our experience, and time can be no time and space can be virtual place. So our time and space can be expanded without any limitation. That's why kind of AR VR has a more potential, about attention so far, and now it has become a main kind of platform. Next slide, please. So what is the metaverse? There is no specific definition so far. So meta is beyond, the verse is universal. So metaverse in one word is beyond kind of our world. But I'm kind of trying to working definition. It's kind of augmented digital world, which is blending clearly physical world and the virtual spaces. But more importantly, these days, this kind of AR, VR-based XR technology and AI technology and intelligent cloud system is working together for users or for travelers to interact and or experience. And not only that, but trade and the virtual goods and services through the currency, which called cryptocurrencies or non-fungible tokens and NFC with one another and other virtual entities. It means people can interact and trade, but also the avatar, we can play around. So I think Metaverse, the idea is started from the idea was exposed through the Ready Player One film, but it started from gaming like Roblox or the some of the entertainment. They started at this kind of metaverse, and they realized it's not only social cultural space, but they realize that they can trade and they can make lots of money in the virtual world. I think that actually make everybody think about metaverse has a great future. That's why Facebook changes the meta, and Microsoft, they actually acquired one of the biggest game company, Blizzard, in order to prepare this kind of metaverse. At Disney, actually, they appointed future strategists to prepare metaverse. So whole world is kind of preparing this kind of a metaverse at the moment. Next slide, please. So there are many cases in tourism. Metaverse is kind of combination of both physical and virtual. So augmented reality is kind of you can do in a real environment. Okay, so Pokemon Go is one of them. The real world company, they are doing all the augmented reality game, which is perfect for the on-site experience. And middle world is completely this kind of digital twin idea. So there are one company called Real Fishing. So it looks like a real fish area, but people virtually, they can fishing together and compete together. And live blogging, this is, we already know this, social media like Facebook, Instagram. We are sharing our tourism experience through this social media, and virtual world is now we start to see as a new kind of cases is completely virtual world. So for example, there are many museums, they are going complete virtual world, and Thobi, for example, they are start to sell the kind of objects through the virtual, and Sandbox, they start to sell virtual property. So this kind of a complete virtual world is emerging, and there are more potential in the future in tourism. Next slide, please. So, I mean, this is something I am, metaverse, I mean, we start to look at AR, VR, XR, and we are more experienced because of this pandemic. But now we're just about to start. I don't think it's now, but we need to think about the future of the metaverse-based tourism. So we need to think about contents. So any content like a pop culture, e-sport, dramas, or webtoons, or movies, they can be suddenly become very good contents for the metaverse world, and people can experience through these contents. And also entertainment and social capability, how we can expand this to have a digital human experience. I think digital human from the AI technology is becoming much more powerful and bigger player role. Okay. And also how to build a virtual tourist metaverse platform, which enables the real and virtual interaction experience. So not only physical experience, but also virtual experience will be important. Okay. And also we need to think about not only AR, VR, XR, but AI and blockchain, how cloud technology, how they can work together. Okay. They will develop by themselves, but how co-evolution means they influence each other. Especially this is a key technology for metaverse economy, means they start to do some business, okay, economy, right? And also what kind of business model can be created for creator economy. One of the biggest advantage of metaverse is everybody can make money. In the past, kind of platform owners like a Facebook, Microsoft, they can actually take advantage of all the monetary kind of advantages. But now everybody can get some advantage, okay, from the metaverse space. And therefore, there are lots of ethical and regulatory issues to support this kind of metaverse economy is important, especially IP issues and NFTs. Okay, next slide, please. This is my last slide. So I thought about kind of what kind of main research questions or research direction will we need to think about, okay, for the future. So at the moment, there are many current kind of lots of opportunities and challenges because of this kind of metaverse technology. Okay, so enhanced social experience can be enhanced, and interactivity and service quality, collaboration, co-creation value, and the trading of virtual product, and the creative economy, which everybody can engage, and new business. But those are opportunities. But there are some challenges like technological complexity, legal issues, who will own a certain content space, regulation, competition, and commissions, and the ethical, social issue, and political issues. So how, from tourism perspective, how we can define the metaverse, okay? What is the definition of metaverse in the context of tourism? And this is quite kind of an important question in the future, especially it's not only by the kind of AR, VR technology, but also AI, cloud, blockchain technology work together. And maybe this physical virtual space will expand something beyond our expectation or imagination. Okay, so lots of things can happen, and maybe in the future, how very practically, how we can create a metaverse business model in this new and changing environment, and how we can utilize NFTs for the real kind of a trading and do the tourism business in the metaverse world. And how you can embrace those key technologies, okay? And how we address ethical and regulatory issues, and especially the experience is different in a new methodological approach, okay? Clearly we need that, and how to measure the experience and emotions, all these behavior, okay? And maybe if we have this kind of research, then we may know how some insight to future implementation of metaverse in a more suitable or sustainable way. Okay, thanks. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Timothy. It's really fascinating to see all of this practically could be an application of metaverse in future. So we have some question lined up for later, but first of all, let's go to our third and final speakers today, Dr. Christopher Monroe from Victoria University of Wellington, is the research flow at the School of Psychology at Victoria University of Wellington, and his topic is emotional experience. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, thank you. Kia ora koutou katoa. I want to start by first thanking both Ian and Naji for inviting me to speak at this event. It's not very often that I have the opportunity to speak to audiences outside of my main area of research, and I appreciate being able to contribute a voice to this important discussion. So as the slide shows, my name is Christopher Monroe. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow in the School of Psychology at Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. And more specifically, what I do is I lead a virtual reality laboratory here at the school. And in that lab, our main focus is on the study of emotional experiences in real life. But we use virtual reality simply because it is this far and away more effective tool to induce or manipulate people's emotions in the laboratory compared to every other method that came before it. So we used to show people images and films or ask them to recall memories. The change in emotion that we would observe was tiny with those, but with VR, it's profound. And so we use VR as a tool, which has led to some really interesting insights. And some of them I'm going to share with you here, and hopefully it'll be clear how some of these are informing the predictions that are coming from me at the end. So when I was thinking about this talk, I was a little bit worried that I would be too far removed from the area of tourism to provide any meaningful insights. But after doing a little bit of reading, I've realized there's tremendous overlap actually between psychological emotion research and research into the tourism industry, because the tourism industry relies upon emotional experiences. If we didn't have emotional experiences, there probably wouldn't be a tourism industry. I mean, if I want to go on a holiday to, say, Fiji, it's not because I, as a human being, am at my best or most optimal when I am, sitting on a sandy beach with my feet in the water. It's because, for whatever reason, being there induces the emotion relaxation in me. So I think the field of tourism and or tourism research and emotion research, it's like we're looking at the same thing, but we're asking very slightly different questions. However, one thing I noticed is that the real difference I've seen between what psychological scientists like myself think emotions are and what the tourism industry thinks emotions are, there's a bit of a difference there. And so what I want to start by doing is sort of describing what emotions are from my perspective. So Naji, next slide, please. So when we talk about emotions, what we recognize as emotions within ourselves is actually comprised of three categories of changes that happen in real time, that evolve and fluctuate over time. The first is what we call feelings, and this is just what we call our emotions. So if I say to you, how happy are you right now? And you tell me sincerely, 4. Well, that is your subjective happiness. It's what you think it is. We have to trust you. As long as you're not deliberately lying to me, that is your subjective happiness. But that's not all it is. Emotions also come with a host of changes inside our body that are meant to prepare us for what we think is coming. So this is our physiological arousal. We might notice a change in our heart rate. If we're afraid, we might notice that our skin starts to sweat as well, or that we might start to breathe more rapidly. And all of these physiological changes are in preparation for changes in our behavior, changes in action to lead us to be more prepared for what we think might be coming our way. So if we are relaxed, our body might feel quite loose. If we're afraid, we might tense up. We might be immobilized by fear. And all of those things are important, not just for talking about emotions and describing them, but actually for being able to recognize them. And I think this is something that the field of tourism, the tourism industry needs also to focus on a lot, because it seems that much of the field is trying to make predictions about how people will feel when they use this different technology. But how somebody feels is this very messy set of corresponding changes that are related to each other sometimes, but only only in some people, and it's actually a very messy puzzle that I think is common across both fields here, not just us as psychological scientists trying to understand emotions in real life, but also the ability to predict how people are going to feel when they engage with different products and experiences. And one thing that I also was quite pleased to see when I was looking into this tourism research was a strong focus on presence, because I am also very interested in presence in our lab. And actually, we've been doing some research over the last couple of years to try and understand how presence, which is the subjective sense of being there, so how much we feel like we are actually in a place, how that changes as a function of what emotions we feel and the intensity of those emotions. And you've probably heard a lot about presence already, because across the tourism industry, presence is also considered the key to making people feel something, and therefore promoting engagement with products and experiences. So as I said, we've been doing some research into this, and so Naj, you can go to the next slide here. So in this particular piece of research, we created this simulation that we call plank walk, and a lot of other people have also tried to do this, and it's obviously designed to induce fear. And I was going to provide some data to show that actually it does induce fear, but it's so reliable and effective that I find that all I really need to do is show people the image, and usually it's convincing enough without bringing graphs and things into it. So we use this to induce fear, and then in another set of studies. Now, can you go on to the next slide, please? So I don't know if these images are going to be very clear to everyone at home, but in this set of studies, we are looking at trying to induce the emotion awe in the same way. So we put people into this virtual reality spaceship that has windows that close around, and at 3 different time points, the windows open up, and outside you see either this kind of space environment with a sun and some planets, or you see that you're underwater and there are these whales all around you, or you're in this huge mountain range scene. And the reason I wanted to focus on these 2 studies is because what we've just found recently is that in both of these studies, there is this tight relationship between how emotional people feel they are, so the extent to which the plank makes them feel more fear, or the extent to which each of these environments makes them feel more awe, and their subjective presence. And this, I think, is really interesting because it means that this relationship between how I feel emotionally and how much I feel like I am there, that I am at the helm of my own experience, it's not dependent upon whether it's a pleasant or an unpleasant emotional experience. This is something that is tied fundamentally to our emotional experiences. And so I'm going to bring that back later when I get to my predictions. But Naji, can you go on to the next slide? So here is where I think things get really interesting. So this is another piece of research that we did in conjunction with the Department of Conservation here in New Zealand earlier this year. And actually the idea of this research was to give people this experience of being in a real place. So this is actually the Otira Viaduct, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, and it's a very, very popular lookout overlooking this mountain range, of course. And what we were actually interested in looking at is how people remembered and paid attention to different signs that we put into the environment. And to do that, of course, we needed people to first feel like they were actually in these environments. And while that research was, interesting in its own respect, what we found really fascinating was what we weren't expecting to find, which was just how automatically people seemed to treat this place as if it was a real place. And so what I mean by that, in one case, there was a man who was in the headset, and I was behind him taking some note of what he was feeling and what he was saying. And he would say things like, this is exactly how it looked when I was here last year, or he would say, my wife was standing over there the last time I was here. They would describe it as if it was where they were, not just a a collection of pictures or something like that. They weren't describing it as media. They were describing it as if I had somehow portaled them there. And this made us wonder, when they later on, if they were to think back on their memories in their life of going to this place in the South Island, where would the experience of being in that experiment fit? Would they think of it as a separate category? Oh, I went to the South Island a couple of times, and then this one time I was in an experiment where I was in VR in that environment. Or would they think of this as part of the same collection of experiences? Like, would they treat this as if this was another visit to the South Island? And so with those questions in mind, I think we can turn to the predictions here, Naji. So I wanted to make both some safe predictions and then some, I'm going to call them scarier predictions, but some things that I'm a little bit worried about here in terms of what might happen in the future when we're all a lot more invested in being in headsets of various kinds, be they VR or AR. I think it's safe to say that VR is here to stay when it comes to destination selection, so like tourism, marketing, and deciding where I want to go for my holiday. And I think that we'll probably use these different technologies to bring other people with us to these places, or to try and capture these places, not as a camera like this, but using a 360 camera so people can experience it in their own headset. I think that's probably going to happen. But what I also think could happen is that if we visit a place in VR before we go there in real life, I think there's a real risk that we spoil that first experience a little bit. That people might have, that there's something special about going to a place and being immersed and present in a place for the very first time, and that by doing that in VR, we might actually be taking away something potentially kind of essential about that initial experience in a place. And it might lead us to feel a little bit more disappointed when we get there in person, especially because we might notice things in person that we didn't notice when we saw it in VR, like maybe there's trash on the ground or something like that, or maybe there's a little bit of smog in the air. And so relatedly, I think the way we
move to the conclusion. Sorry.
Oh yes, sure. Well, this is the last one here. So I think the way we encode memories in VR may be no different than the way we encode memories outside VR, and I think that could have some problematic implications about how we think about our life narrative and the way that it might exist in both real life and VR. So with that, I think I'll end.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really fascinating. And it's fascinating to see that multidisciplinary nature of tourism allows it to be connected to other contexts so well. So now, thank you so much to all of the speakers and for the really insightful and well-connected presentation. So now I'm gonna stop the share screen and go to the questions. So when we go to the questions, so there are lots of questions out there. So I'm gonna start with the first one. We have a question from Sean. Says that, how do you see in a relation of information overload? Will the phenomena like ease of changing windows, like with a click affect virtual tourism? Will scope of customer confusion increase? So Faizan, would you like to start with this one?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I tried to answer this in the chat as well. This is unknown, right? Because when things change and the way people use things, then their consumer behavior or the user behavior also changes. It's the same when people used to watch TV for hours, and now, the attention span for watching videos is 8 seconds. So we cannot say before we go into this research and go. My question, one of the thought nuggets I presented was exactly the same thing. with the metaverse, with the increase of these technologies, we need to think whether the existing consumer behavior theories or our understanding of consumer behavior is going to apply, or will it change? Apparently, from now, like if we look at it from now on, certainly the information overload is going to increase, the confusion is going to increase, but so will the consumer behavior. So this is something we have to see.
Thank you so much, Faisal. So the next question, let's go to this one on Metaverse. In Metaverse, tourists can walk in hotels and see the room size, decor, and room features. In this way, reservation can be increased by giving a sense of trust to tourists and can increase their revenues by using the Metaverse for sales and marketing purposes. So, Timothy, I think if you like, you can take this question up.
Sorry, I was muted. So it's a question from Eunice. Yes. So like a tourist can walk in a hotel, see the room size, decoration, room features. So yes, I think that is the I mean the AR and VR technology, or in the metaverse context, what technology makes happen is kind of the limitation of space actually can be resolved in a way. Okay, the question is how real is a different matter. But if they feel like they have a real kind of very similar to real experience, that will give much more like a confidence, and also this will give you for the companies not only the physical kind of a business side of it, but virtually they can actually have a much more business opportunity. For example, if you look at some kind of entertainment business, they used to kind of do the performance, and physically they were limited. But kind of during the pandemic, what they done is that they actually do the performance online. But like for example, one of the famous group in the world is Korean BTS. They did this kind of online kind of concert, and they actually made more money than actual physical tour, right? So I think these kind of things like happen. It can happen in the tourism. So I think it will be additional, but kind of a way of creating kind of revenue for the tourism business. Okay, is that some kind of a answer for the question? Yes, it's kind of a revenue and sales and marketing purpose. So actually think about your physical space is limited, your physical business is limited, but your virtual tourism business can be expanded anywhere in the world if your metaverse space is really attractive. Okay, and that because of people during the pandemic, they already kind of experiment all this kind of virtual experience. So I think if we can provide both physical, really a good combination in harmony, balance between physical and virtual experience together through the metaverse concept, yes, there are some opportunity for much more kind of generating revenues and marketing and sales. That is already happening in other sectors. Okay.
Thank you so much, Timothy. So we have a question from Katie, which I think goes to Faison. What do you mean by going behind intention, individual happiness? What was happening before and what is changing? I thought people accessing this gadget for happiness.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so my point earlier actually was about research, right? So most of the research that we see right now in terms of consumers, it's focusing on intentions to use or acceptance or adoption and things like this. However, we don't have a lot of research that really digs into what benefits people can get out of it. I think in the whole world right now, we have a problem of aging populations, right, in many countries. And with aging comes loneliness and other problems. So, for example, in Japan, there's a rise of companion robot sales, and the reason is to counter loneliness and aging issues, right? So my point was actually to see if we can use XR to counter loneliness, which obviously can lead to long-term well-being and life satisfaction and happiness. So that's what I was referring to.
Thank you so much. So we have another question from Sean for Chris. Hi, Christopher. In continuation to scarier prediction, what are your thoughts on the risk of people start using this on animals, particularly manipulating their emotions? What checks can we have?
Wow, that is actually a very interesting question that I definitely haven't gotten before. There's not a lot of research on what animals think about being in VR. Though, well, actually, there's some research using mice, but it's hard to tell what mice are actually feeling. I think what the concern that you're probably raising is more like people doing this to their pets, or to maybe great apes who have the ability to who have some greater, higher cognition functions. Unfortunately, I think that the way it's going to end up working is that the checks that we develop for that kind of thing will probably be more reactive than proactive, because I think it's such an open question. I'm not sure how they would respond to it. But I think that because we empathize with animals and we can, their emotions are just as visible to us as our own emotions are visible to one another. I think that we will be able to see if if there are problems that are arising as a result of people doing that. And I'm not sure how technologically we will develop checks on that, but I think that the way that videos go viral, I don't think it'll take long for people to recognize that needs to be controlled. What I can't tell you, I have no idea about, is how you would actually control that. So I apologize if that's not the most satisfying of answers, but that's what that's kind of as far as I think I can predict down that road.
Thank you so much, Chris. So we have a question from Riley. The formation of Metaverse required a decentralization. So in a completely free market environment, will regulation be a problem? For example, Bitcoin, because of its decentralization and privacy, it has become a currency favored by criminal groups to trade. What if the Metaverse encountered the same issues? Timothy, would you like to answer this question, please?
Well, anybody can answer this question. Okay, I will start my answer. Okay, so yes, I think that is quite true. Why the Bitcoin is kind of is popular? Because of the privacy. Nobody knows. Okay, and at the moment, all the concept of Metaverse is decentralization, democratization, because that is already the power, already existing power that governed all the systems, financial systems or economic system. But this kind of the Metaverse, especially blockchain, is why it's important, because it's decentralizing. It gives more democracy. So if more people the freedom, or just kind of avoid some existing governance. Okay. However, at the same time, because of this Bitcoin, this private decentralization, it can be used by the criminal. Okay. Highly possible. The question is, but in the Metaverse, because of you are trading the virtual objects and products, using existing currency is not going to work. Okay, you have the virtual experience and you want to pay card in the virtual environment. No. So therefore, you need this kind of the currency which can be used by any kind of anybody in this kind of a Metaverse space. Okay, that's why certain at the moment all the kind of a financial system or political system or economic system is governed by country or certain like continent, some sort of organization. But in metaverse world, it's not like that. For example, Facebook users, Instagram users, there are 20 million, 200 million users from everywhere, anywhere in the world. Okay, so therefore you need a different types of currency, different types of way of doing things. Okay, that's why it brings lots of questions, challenges about who owns this, who will regulate. I think it's still open. The few kind of a tech company like a Facebook or Meta or Microsoft or Amazon, actually they want to be or again want to own this kind of a metaverse space. Exactly what they used to do, they dominate the platform, like a social media platform. Okay, so I think it brings a lot of questions, okay, about these legal issues, okay, and also equality issues. I think Ryan Young at the bottom asked a question about kind of is any implication about social economic inequalities? Yes, there will be, okay, some inequality if it is being dominated by number of a big tech giant. Okay, so now it's time for us to kind of question is about how we can kind of get involved, because the metaverse idea, as soon as we start using blockchain, it's the idea of a decentralization, de-democratization, which means more people get benefit. So I think it's a really important time for so many kind of people to realize these trends and changes and get involved in this kind of a movement and try to participate how we will regulate, not leaving that to some few big tech giants. So I think it's really fascinating idea, but also very dangerous time. And also it's a very important time to make this metaverse is more kind of what is the word? Kind of not profitable. It's not economic word. It's good for everyone. Okay, so I think it's quite important to understand this technology and make some actions. Okay.
Thank you so much, Timothy. So I'm going to go to the last question because of timing. For Chris from Violet, she's wondering how you differentiate psychology and feeling in diagram. We have 1 minute to answer this question.
Sure. Well, I think I can do this one in a pretty short amount of time. So you're absolutely right. Feeling is definitely part of the overall view of emotion, but also part of what psychology views emotions as. The difference really is that, and this is not just in the case of tourism in the industry, but actually most other fields that talk about emotions outside of psychology, is there's a real focus exclusively on what people describe their emotions as. And so what I meant to show in that diagram was that emotions have these two other components that are crucial, and that the overall picture includes feelings, but it's not feelings as what we describe, but it's not purely that. And we have to reckon with the relationship between what our body does when we feel these emotions and what we do when we describe them. So that I hope that clarifies the difference.
Thank you so much, Chris. So we need to wrap it up now. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that we didn't get to the last couple of questions. I just need to remind our next webinar will be on 24th of February, 3 p.m. In association with Asian Development Bank. And the question is, does tourism have a future in Pacific Islands? And after that, we have another one on 15th of March, 9:15 a.m., which is a book launch on science fiction, tourism, and disruption. Thank you so much, everybody. On behalf of university, a huge thank to our three speakers. It was a pleasure, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
I think everybody's starting to disappear and go out, but again, I think I've lost Nanji. But just on a personal note, thank you very much. To Timothy, it's probably good night.
Yes, I'm gonna have a go to bed. So.
Good night. To Faizan, I don't know what time it is. I presume it's about 5-6 o'clock in Florida.
Yes, it's around 4 p.m. But my kids just came back from school, so I have my day just started.
I think you're quite right. It's busier now than you will have. So some of my colleagues look forward to coming to work. But it's fun. And Christopher, it's good morning to you. You've got your day ahead of you. Louisa, thank you very much for being in the background and supporting. And Nanji's disappeared. And again, she's done a wonderful job. I'll formally send you an email in the next day or two. And this recording will go online. It takes about two weeks, depending on Recom and stuff like that. But it's been a pleasure. And just one final thing: if you're organising a webinar or seminar or anything like that, there's any way we can help with from Victoria University in terms of speakers or participation or whatever you want to do, please just ask. But I know this has been very insightful for Nanji, and she's very grateful for your time. And if you were in New Zealand, it would be time to go. Well, it would be going for a coffee or having a glass of wine or a beer. But it's a bit too early. Or a beer or wine, or just to drink to socialise, because one of the things we do miss is the physical presence, which in 2030 might be a hybrid. But thank you.
I start like physical conference this May, so I'm in Lisbon. It's an international exile conference which I'm learning every year, and hopefully things things going well. I mean, we have some people who want to just participate in online, but also there are strong kind of expectation and intention to have a physical conference as well. So I'm looking forward. We're quite busy to preparing the conference, about 100 kind of submissions, papers, both academia and industry. So I think, quite busy for that. And we're looking forward to that actually at the moment.
I think at the moment, many of us here in New Zealand are trying to get out of the country, but the problem is we can leave, but we can't come back.
No, I think in Europe, I think it's we in the UK, as you know, there's no kind of restriction in terms of self-isolation anymore. So people now start book holiday in the Easter at the moment. Yeah. So tourism industry is now start to boost now in the UK and Europe. Okay, that's a good sign.
It has. It's many years since I've been to Manchester, and the only thing I remember about Manchester is going to the Coronation Street theme pub at Granada.
The IT, the BBC is the studio. Yeah.
So it's been a while, but it's been a while. But it's a lovely place. Nanji, welcome back, and again, thank you. You were very gracious today.
Well done. It's a sharing session. It's it's sometimes challenging, but you did well today. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. I'm proud to be here, and thank you so much. I'm just seeing all the people that I'm citing them in my research. I'm referring to your papers, all of you, all the time. So it's a real pleasure for me to chair this webinar and be here.
So Nazi is doing PhD in the ARVL XR?
Yes, actually, my title is Impact of XR Technologies on Tourist Emotion and Behavior.
Right, okay, I see. Very important topic, okay. So I'm sure you will lots of food for thought in terms of methodology and subject research context and sampling, experiment or lots of different ideas at the moment. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, it's been a challenge, but Chris was the one who has saved me a lot in terms
Okay.
of collecting data and doing experiment. I really want to thank Chris for that, because I'm doing research, but practically when you're facing with technology, we need someone who is expert in searching and finding a solution. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but we're looking to the future.
Yeah, especially the methodology. I mean, the Faizan is a great, expert in the methodology, and it's one of the area which I am kind of interested in. We need a new methodological approach to measure either experience, emotion, or whatever the experience, not only physical side of it, but more virtual combination of a physical and virtual metaverse. You need a whole kind of maybe traditional, conventional methodology may not sufficient to kind of measure real kind of experience or emotion. So that is a whole kind of new area for less of interest. Even the companies, I am at the moment, I'm also doing lots of healthcare, outside of a tourism project at the moment, and many companies are interested. So it's VR experience and real experience and the online experience. Which one is better? Which is cost effective? Where we should invest? From the company's point of view. Okay, healthcare system, education system. So I think it's all question is very, very important, and maybe experiment research is quite useful at the moment, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm using a mixed method, and I'm learning from Ian and Ina Rechenberger, my other supervisor, in terms of qualitative, and Faizan also is expert in terms of quantitative methodology and structural equation modeling, and I'm learning from all of them.
Yeah, I mean, there are companies like a Tesla Suit or like Lucid Labs. They do the like EEG eye tracking, and they wear the clothes, and they actually measure all the behavior. The companies are offering that kind of the technology is there. So the question is how the academics can work together with the technology partners and create kind of a right methodological approach, which should be available for academics to write a paper. At the same time, the company can use their methodology to prove that what they're offering through the AR, VR, XR is more appealing or better or more successful. I think industry want to we need a research-based evidence. So I think a bit of both academics and this area, which is more interest, lots of more interesting in this area, but not sufficiently developed methodological approach at the moment. That's what I see at the moment. Yeah. Well, I'm sure other you have some idea, but that's kind of my current kind of thought at the moment. Yeah.
That's absolutely correct, Professor Jung. I think, like I said, in my assessment of the research, I've done several review papers, right? And most of them are survey-based, which many companies may not be interested in because it doesn't really give you anything real actionable, right? So that's why I actually recently got a paper rejected from a journal, which I'm thinking to send to Ian, because the comment that I got was very interesting. They said it's too futuristic. So, okay, that is interesting. So probably Tourism Futures may be a good place to send it to, in which we talked about cyborgs and robotic arms and probably a body enhancement to use augmented devices. So anyways, you're absolutely right. I think we need newer methodologies. We need newer ways of looking at stuff. Plus, also, I look at my kids now, both of them, 7 and 6. They are playing games like Minecraft and other things, and they have their own digital identities in those games. And there's a very clear difference in how they behave at home. But the moment they start playing, then there's a sudden personality shift. The way they talk, the way they do things, excitement, everything is so different. Now, we have looked at some research. There's some research coming out which is looking at people's experience, but they do it after the peak time is gone, which probably Chris would be the right person to talk about this more. I just feel that most of the research right now is not really capturing that peak moments where people are during consumption, right?
Yeah.
Rather than after consumption.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's more post-event kind of a self-report type. Even the interview is more filtered already, and the survey is you already experienced, but you never know exactly that within that during 10 minutes. I think there are lots of like emotional, up and down, excitement, lots of changes, but it's exactly where and when happen. Survey is not gonna kind of measure, catch that, specific time and specific moment. So, that's the kind of a limitation of the current kind of research methodology, especially, I mean, it was okay so far, but I think if we start to look at all the more like virtual, combination of, AR, VR, experience, then we realize that more and more people realize that existing methodology may not sufficient, okay, to measure, okay, yeah, that's what's that. Many more and more researchers are now thinking about that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that what we need here as well is a study that shows the effect of repeated exposure to emotional events over time, and how that, whether or not, if it's a different emotion each time, or if it's the same emotion, the same experience, what happens after that first one? Because I don't know if you have this experience as well, but everyone who I bring into my lab, when I put them on the plank or something, they have this pretty astonishingly profound emotional experience. And some of those people become my students, and I end up having them go into the experience more and more. Sometimes I have them try and like build aspects of it. And so they're in VR, and now they're standing off the plank trying to like position it. And I'm just like, you don't seem afraid at all anymore. And so this happens relatively quickly, where this emotional experience that we have, the very first one, is special, but then at some point it drops away. And now the thing that used to terrify you just no longer does at all. I mean, I can go on that plank and I don't even think of it the same way anymore. And so I think that I was looking for this paper because I thought that it could really inform my talk, and I couldn't find this paper anywhere. I don't think anyone's done it, where they look at the effect of repetitious VR experiences on the emotional elicitation. And I think that's what we really need to see, because that's the real question I think that we're faced with, is when people get a VR headset that they have, in their house at all times, they're going to be using it all the time. It's not just that first experience. And what's that going to really do to people in the long term? And will it always be as effective? I don't know.
No, I think we started this kind of AR VR project 2013, 14, 15, and we did like an AR VR project, and it's always a wow factor for the first-time users, and then that kind of the wow factor, decreased dramatically. Okay, so one time, second time, third time, so much difference. And also those people who are exposed to this VR experience many times, and first time, there are so much kind of a different degree of reactions from the people, the users. Okay, and my girls, unfortunately, they are the one of the first kind of girls who try the Google Glass and the Samsung Gear VR, but they never say wow. Because when they were 5 or 6 years old, they already tried that. Okay, and okay, so it's interesting. Okay, but certainly that might affect people.
I have a question. You just said something which is very interesting, right? So that's right. If the first time you use anything like this, there's a wow factor, or maybe even second time, but then it diminishes slowly, gradually, right? But that doesn't happen with everything. I mean, like just imagine you are Korean by birth. So if you are in Manchester, you look at a Korean restaurant, you really like it. every time you want to go there, you have anticipation. The more you go, the more anticipation you have, right? So you value it. So I think the question would also be, when you use a VR-based experience or AR-based experience, where do you see that augmented or virtual element, right? Is it really an augment to you, or is it really the main experience? So for certain things, you would see if you value them a lot, the more you do, the more anticipative you are for it. But then for this one, you are absolutely right. Like the more you do it, the less you become wow or surprised, or you even value it anymore.
And also, it's an interesting point. Is it really wow is always good or not? Maybe tourists, it's just one experience. Wow is so important, but it depends on the context, depends on the contents. If you always want to give a wow, sometimes education is not really great. Okay, so that the experience should feels like a real rather than so much wow. So it depends on the what kind of what's the purpose of providing this VR experience, what kind of contents, what kind of context you are offering these to. Okay, tourism, you need some wow, because the industry itself. Okay, you kind of probably give some great experience, memorable, okay, and unique, multi-sensory experience. So tourism maybe kind of is close to wow factor. It's going to work, but when it comes to very different education or healthcare, very delicate situation, too many wows may not really great things. Yeah,
I very much agree. Friends, I have to unfortunately head off to the university myself to go to some other meetings. I'd love to stick around and chat more. This is fascinating. But thank you so much again for including me in the discussion.
Thank you,
so
Chris.
much, Chris.
Okay, great.
Have a good rest of your night.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Jung. Good to see you again. We'll meet again soon, talk about the project.
Yeah.
Well, I think meet you soon also.
One of the things I am trying to do is in my own company, I bring the companies and the researchers, especially VR researchers who, it's a multidisciplinary, not only tourism, but kind of any like a healthcare or education, and trying to do some workshop and trying to develop some kind of a research agenda about research methodology in XR or Metaverse, which is needed. So maybe, you're interested in somebody who knows the methodology very well. I think this is well suited, because without foundation, just jumping to the XR methodology doesn't make sense. Okay.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I'll be happy to work with you if that is something you want to do right in the future, moving forward with methodologies. And yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Zhang. Thank you, Ian. Naji, I will give you a call on WhatsApp so we can talk about the meeting. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
So all the
Thank
best.
you so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.